The quest for perfect sound. It's a real journey, right? It can even become an obsession. And let's be honest, it gets super confusing super fast. So, what if we could just cut through all that noise? I mean, the audiophile world is just packed with conflicting advice. You've got endless gear options and these debates that they just never seem to end, do they? So the big question is, where do you even begin? Well, today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to follow along on one audiophile's journey, watch them build and tweak their system. And by looking at their real-world problems, we're going to uncover some universal truths about what makes for truly great sound. All right, let's dive right in. Okay, first things first, let's talk about the foundation. Seriously, before you even think about spending a single dollar on upgrades, there are some basic, fundamental steps that can totally transform how your system sounds. So the system our audiophile is starting with, it's a really interesting one. You've got this low wattage DQuare tube amp, and it's paired with some super efficient Klipsch speakers. Now that is a classic combo, right? It's designed for a really dynamic, lively sound. And for sources, we're looking at a solid Cambridge streamer and a good old Technics turntable. Now, this is absolutely key. These 4 tweaks, which come from the experts over at Totem Acoustic, are easily the highest impact changes you can make, and they cost you $0. It all starts with speaker placement. You got to get them away from the walls and form that perfect equilateral triangle with your listening spot. Then it's about taming your room a bit with things like rugs or curtains, and finally, just double-checking that all your connections are tight and isolating your speakers from vibrations. Seriously, this isn't optional stuff. This is the bedrock of good sound. All right, so the foundation is set. Everything's sounding better already. But now our user decides to add a new piece to the puzzle, a preamplifier. And oh boy, this is where the choices, and yeah, the confusion really start to ramp up. So the choice comes down to 2 very different tube preamps. On one side, you have the shit Freya Plus. This thing is all about flexibility, right? It's got 3 different modes, remote control, balanced inputs, the works. But on the other side, you've got the DeckWare's CSP3, and it's the total opposite. No remote, no fancy inputs, but it is hand-wired, it's tube rectified, and it's designed for perfect synergy with that DeckWare amp. It's really the classic battle. Do you go for features or for pure, unadulterated sound? You know how it is. You add one piece of new gear, and it just opens up a whole new can of worms, a whole new set of questions. And that brings us right to one of the most heated, most legendary debates in all of audio. Do expensive cables actually make a difference? Okay, let's just get something straight right off the bat. The idea that cables can affect sound, it's not just snake oil. It's not magic. As this person on an audio forum rightly points out, it's based on some pretty basic electrical engineering. The whole argument boils down to this. A cable's capacitance can, in theory, act like a filter and roll off those high frequencies. So, what even is cable capacitance? Well, to put it simply, it's just the cable's ability to store a tiny bit of electrical charge. Now, under the wrong conditions, we're talking specifically about a source with high output impedance, like some tube preamps. That little stored charge can mess with the signal and actually filter out those delicate, high-frequency details we all love. And look, this isn't subjective voodoo stuff. There's an actual formula for it. This equation right here lets you calculate the exact frequency where the sound is going to be cut by 3 decibels. And it's all based on 2 things, the output resistance of your gear and the total capacitance of your cable. So here's the kicker. When you actually run the numbers for a normal home audio setup, and I mean even a worst-case scenario with a high-impedance tube preamp, how long does that cable need to be before this effect even becomes audible? The answer? 212.2 feet. Yeah, so for most of us, with our little 3-foot or 6-foot interconnects, cable capacitance is just not an issue. It's really not. Okay, so I think we can put that common cable myth to bed. Let's turn our attention to the real challenges of using a tube amp, because they have way less to do with your cables and a whole lot more to do with things like impedance and noise. And this graph, man, this just illustrates perfectly what a tough job an amplifier has. What you're looking at is a speaker's impedance. It is not a nice, simple, stable number. Nope. It's a wild, crazy, reactive load that is constantly changing with the frequency of the music. The amp's job is to control that chaos and make clean music. And that is an especially tough job for a tube amp. And of course, not all tube amps are created equal. You've basically got 2 main flavors, single-ended, which people call SET for short, and push-pull.
And if you hang out on forums like Audiophile, you'll hear people describe SET amps as sounding more natural and relaxed. Push-pull designs, on the other hand, are generally considered more punchy, with tighter bass and, well, you get more power for your money. And just so you know, our user's Deckware amp, that's a single-ended amp. So, our audiophile gets their whole new system hooked up, and bam! They run smack into a classic tube problem. This persistent hum, or at least what they thought was a hum, that was driving them absolutely crazy. And this quote? This is from a real post from someone wrestling with this exact same thing. So after a whole lot of troubleshooting, they finally have a breakthrough. They realize what they're hearing isn't that low-frequency hum you get from ground loops. No, it was actually a higher-frequency hiss, that kind of shh sound. And that is often caused by something completely different called gain mismatch. Just knowing the difference between hum and hiss, that was the key that unlocked the whole solution.
And that solution, well, it lies in a really crucial, but often totally misunderstood concept. This was the final tweak that really brought the whole system to life: proper gain staging.
Okay, this is where it all comes together. The wrong way to set your volume, and a lot of people do this, is to just crank your preamp and power amp to 100% and then use your digital source volume at a really low level. Why is this bad? Well, it amplifies all the built-in noise in your system. And even worse, you're literally throwing away musical information from your digital source. You're losing bit depth. The right way is to keep that digital source signal strong, up around 85 to 100%, and then use the analog volume controls on your preamp and amp to actually manage how loud it is.
So, why does this actually work so well? It really comes down to three things. First, you're preserving the full digital resolution coming from your streamer, all that musical detail. Second, you're not just needlessly cranking up the noise floor of all your electronics. And third, you're feeding your sensitive tube amplifier a nice, strong, clean signal without blasting its input. It's all about optimizing each and every component in the chain.
So this whole journey, from the most basic setup tweaks all the way to advanced stuff like gain staging, it really leaves us with one critical question that every single audio enthusiast should ask themselves. Looking at your own system, from speaker placement all the way down the line, is it truly optimized? Or are you leaving a whole lot of sound quality on the table?